Good evening. I would like to call to order the September 17th Lake Washington School Board meeting. Welcome, everybody. I will entertain a motion to approve the September 17th agenda.
So moved. Second.
It has been moved by Director... Sorry, it's stuck in my face. It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director La Liberty that we approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So our next step will be public comment, and to just sort of give a heads up, on a monthly basis, we do provide the opportunity for public comment during board meetings, and the public comment time is reserved for our working meeting for the board to hear from the public. There are multiple avenues. It's not only here you can talk to us, feel free to email us, you can call us, you can write a letter even. That'd be nice to have something stamped in my mailbox sometimes. Please note that the public comment is not a question-answer session with the board. The board and superintendent will not respond to community members during public comment, as our goal is to listen and to learn from you, but we will provide follow-up to ensure that things are followed through on. We usually have about 30 minutes on the agenda. If a number of people are signed up for similar topics, please don't repeat what the person before said, but just build on what was going forward at that point in time. And then each individual is provided up to 3 minutes to speak. We will use the lights over there to help you know. When your name is called, please approach the podium, speak into the microphone, giving us your full name and school attendance area for the record. And that's it. It is important for all community members to feel welcome and safe during our board's business meeting. So the board does not take public comments on issues related to personnel or individually named staff at board meetings. Audience members are expected to treat all attendees with respect and civility. So from that, I'd like to take our first person signed up is David Greschler.
Good evening. My name is David Greschler. I'm a resident of Kirkland, and I'm here officially representing the Neighbors for a Safer Kirkland group, which is the official pro group for Proposition 1, which Kirkland residents will be voting on this fall. As you know, because I know the city has worked with you on this, the proposition is really bringing safety both to our community and our schools in a number of ways. It includes a PROACT police force, resources for both the homeless as well as for mental health. There's a lot of different projects involved in there, but probably most appropriate for this meeting is the fact that it's partly going to fund the 4 SRO officers that I know will be shared in funding with Lake Washington. And so the reason I'm here tonight is we're working very hard to get the word out about the proposition. We're trying to get the word out about how good it is and that people should vote for it. As you may know, it's really just 1 penny for every $10 purchase that happens in Kirkland. So it is an incredibly good deal. And for those who like math, that's 0.01%. People sometimes can't quite relate that to pennies, but anyway, what we're really looking for is, as we're getting word out, is endorsements. Cassandra, we know you provided an individual endorsement yesterday, and that was great. It's already on the website, but we would really like it if the board could provide an endorsement. And then we would put that on our website and put it on the posters and so on. So that's really my request tonight. I don't know if you can respond to that, but certainly I can follow up with my email and so on if you would like to communicate that way. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. So our next person is Sarah Franklin.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Franklin. I have a 2nd grader at Ben Franklin Elementary. I'm also an organizer for Indivisible Kirkland, which is a local civic engagement and volunteer group. And I'm here tonight to express some concerns raised among Indivisible members, looking ahead to Kirkland's ballot initiative on public safety, as David was just talking about. Many people have come to us to express concern over the potential unintended consequences of school resource officers. The truth of the matter is that in many cases, the intersection between policing and schooling can create some drastic and life-altering consequences for students involved, especially for more vulnerable populations, like students of color or students with special needs. I live in Kirkland and have had only the best interactions with our police officers, and I have tremendous respect for our chief, Chief Harris. But that doesn't negate the need for schools, cities, and community members to have open, thoughtful discussions about the role of SROs in our schools. Too often people say that the horror stories, the students who've been arrested for sleeping in class, the students who've been tasered, the elementary school student who's handcuffed in the back of a police car, those stories happen elsewhere. That couldn't happen here. But honestly, saying that is speaking from a place of great privilege. To say that we don't need to worry about these things is to disregard many people's reality. Even when school resource officers do everything right, there can still be unintended consequences for students who face law enforcement at school. For example, to take a current issue, many families, including many in this district, live in fear right now of immigration enforcement. It's just the truth. They fear ICE agents, and by extension, that fear sometimes extends to all law enforcement. And it can be scary for kids. And I want to acknowledge that I know the Kirkland PD isn't out there looking for people to turn over to ICE, but that doesn't change the perception and the visceral fear that many families have right now of law enforcement. Now imagine being a child or a teenager and facing that fear every day when you go to school. Again, without the SRO doing anything wrong, there's already a dichotomy in place with those with privilege and those without. And that has consequences that we need to address. I'm not suggesting that we do away with SROs. I don't think that's reasonable at this point, but I am absolutely calling upon the school board to lead the way in engaging with open dialogue with the community, with law enforcement in the cities like Kirkland, to make sure that we're employing data-driven best practices in how we utilize SROs, and that we have codified standards for these practices and for accountability measures. If we don't have these conversations, we're leaving our students vulnerable. If we don't have these conversations, we're also leaving our SROs vulnerable, asking them to do a job that we haven't clearly and explicitly delineated. I believe that the city of Kirkland will be reaching out to the Lake Washington School District and to the community to begin this discussion, and I look forward to hearing your input on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next person is Kimberly Scott.
Good evening, Superintendent and Board of Directors. Appreciate the time. My name is Kimberly Scott. I'm a resident of Kirkland. I'm also the chair of the Human Services Commission for the City of Kirkland. Our commission, well, we have a lot to gain from Prop 1, don't we? We're very excited about the extra funding for homelessness and for mental health, but we also have some concerns, a lot of what Sarah just addressed around SROs. There's a lot of unintended consequences that happen when we're not measuring the outcomes correctly. So that's probably our biggest concern. I do have a copy of a letter that our commission wrote and sent to City Council back in July that does have some of the points that I'm highlighting tonight and some that Sarah highlighted, as well as resources. But when we talk about the SROs on campuses, those groups that are really at jeopardy are those minority students, those low-income students, and those disabled students. And those are really some of our most protected students that we have, and not ones that we really want to put in jeopardy. Now, I know this issue is nationwide, and we like to say that it's not here, just like Sarah said. And I think that everybody here has the best intentions, and I think our SROs that are currently there have the best intentions. And maybe they're doing the right things right now, but without having them documented, we don't know what happens when we leave. So I would like to encourage that those conversations with the city, with the task force, with opening it up to the citizens does happen. There are plenty of resources that are available for us. There's actually a great report. It's Students Not Suspects that the Washington State ACLU created. It has a lot of the documentation of really what's going on in our state itself, some of best practices and better practices, as well as model language and things to measure for us to look at. So I'm extremely excited to say our city is concerned about the safety of our students and the citizens, and I am supporting Proposition 1, but I really, really want us to take a better look at how we engage the citizens. Those that are affected should be at the table helping us to create what the job description is and the intended outcomes are. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Carolina Borrego. Nice.
Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, Dr. Stavum. My name is Carolina Borrego. I am the office manager of Alcott Elementary School. I am beginning my 18th year working in the district. I also am the president of the Lake Washington Educational Support Professionals, known as LWESP. Several of us are here tonight to extend a special welcome to you and our school board members with the start of a new academic year. Thank you for all your work and dedication to our district and to the success and well-being of our students. LWESP represents over 200 office professionals. We work with every one of our schools at Support Services, Willows, and here in the Resource Center. We support every aspect of the work needed to achieve our district's vision of every student future ready. We work with the parents and guardians to welcome and register new students. We help ensure students' medical records are accurate and up to date. We dispense prescriptions, medication. We help students who miss their bus. We track down parents and call 911 when medical emergencies occur. We maintain and reconcile school and department budgets. We process paychecks. We support the capital project work in our growing district. We handle behind-the-scenes work needed for professional learning for our fabulous teachers. We find coverage when teachers are out and there aren't enough substitutes to cover. We work to create and sustain that important sense of community in our schools. We connect with students when we see that they are having a bad day. We encourage students to always do their best. With our new schools now open and enrollment always growing, we are a successful and thriving district. I can say on my behalf and for all the LWESP members that we are very proud of our district and our students, our staff, and the vital work we do in their service. Dr. Stavem has stressed the importance of providing uncommon service and a warm welcome at our schools and work sites. We couldn't agree more. I am joined tonight by LWESP members who want to share the welcome we have been providing at our schools. I am holding note cards from members who want to share their stories of uncommon service with you. Our intention tonight was not to take too much of your time, but to introduce our members. Please take these note cards and read them when time permits. Thank you again for your time and for your hard work.
Thank you very much. Our next person is Paula White.
Hello, board members, superintendent, and welcome to Lake Washington School District. I'm Paula White. I live in Houghton, and I'm part of a group called Kirkland Safe, and I'm here to tell you about a program that we're doing in Kirkland. It's also bled over a little bit into Redmond, Woodinville, and Bellevue a little bit. It's an all-city read program, and I don't know if you've ever heard of an all-city read program, but it's when city or even a university will pick a book and they try to get as many people to hear about it, read it, talk about it, come together, and watch the Hollywood movie that actually they picked, or they have on this book. The book that we picked was Spare Parts for Undocumented Teenagers, One Ugly Robot in the Pursuit of the American Dream. It's really a beautiful book. Some of the themes are teamwork, perseverance, robotics, and really opening up discussion about how it is to have a safe, inclusive, and welcoming city. We have lots of different activities going on in programs. We have approximately right now 15 to 20 book clubs reading it. We have a robot expo at Lake Washington High School this Saturday at 10 o'clock. The robotics teacher, Liz Sergiani, has been incredibly helpful with this. We're trying to get actually as many robotic people involved, so if you know anybody or any other teams who want to be involved, send them our way. We are showing the movie. We have a documentary at the very end of the program about what happened to these 4 young men 10 years after they won this robotics contest against MIT. And I'm not giving anything away. It's a true story. They came from an impoverished high school, really against all odds. They won against MIT. It's just remarkable. The big event is we have Freddie Lajvardi, who's one of the robotics coaches, and he started with these young men, and he is coming actually to speak October 21st. And his speech is From Improbable to Unstoppable. You can see him on YouTube, a really inspiring person. We have many supporters, City of Kirkland, Kirkland Libraries, both of them, Friends of Library Kirkland, the Book Tree, which is the independent bookstore. We have the Kirkland Cultural Arts Council, and we're working with Boys and Girls Club, K-Tub, which is the teen center. We've gone into Merrill Gardens, they're reading our book. Madison House is reading it. So I'm just encouraging you, if anybody wants to get involved, or we're still looking for involvement at this point, we have a great website. It's called kirklandreads.org. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And our last one I have signed up is MJ Carlson.
Good evening. I'm MJ Carlson. I have a fourth grader at AG Bell. I volunteer there, and I also volunteer at Juanita High in the TEALS program and at Finn Hill in the AVID program, which is super cool. I also have a master's degree in social work, and I did some of my training in correctional facilities, and that has left me really concerned about the negative effects on kids of any kind of involvement with law enforcement, and especially what they call the school to prison pipeline. I'm sure I don't need to lecture you on that, what that is, but the idea is that involvement with law enforcement increases kids' chances of dropping out and of future incarceration, and that this is, it seems to be causative, not just a correlation, in that a kid who gets involved in law enforcement is not just more likely to be a problematic person who's going to commit crimes later, but that actually that involvement in being arrested or in being in juvenile detention, for example, puts them on a bad path that makes them more likely to drop out and so on, as compared to if some other method had been used to take care of that kid's behavioral problems. And finally, an important point here that some others have brought up is this disproportionately affects Black, Native American, and Hispanic kids. And because of that, I'm really concerned about this proposal in Kirkland to add SROs to our junior highs. I certainly know the national research on this, which shows, somewhat surprisingly, I guess, that SROs' presence in a school does not decrease violence in the school. We've seen that lots of school shootings have occurred in schools that have had SROs as well as schools that haven't. There is not enough data to sort of figure out odds there. But in terms of sort of day-to-day violence, SROs do not make a school safer. What they do in the nationwide research is drastically increase the odds that a kid is going to end up arrested or in law enforcement care, by as much as 15 times in some places. Now, I know that other communities that you take care of have SROs in the junior highs already, and I know that the mayor in Kirkland has said, we don't want a program that's like these programs that are just jailing 7-year-olds for stealing milk and all these horror stories you hear about. But as a community member who's faced with whether or not to vote for this proposition that has a lot of other things that I love in it, I'm really concerned that I don't know enough about what makes the program here different from the programs that have been failing to deliver on their promises all across the country. So I would encourage you to look into some research and into being able to articulate what it is that makes this a program that's different from the SRO programs that are not working for other communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who didn't get a chance to sign up who would still like to speak? Okay, seeing nobody, I would like to thank you all for your public comment, but please don't leave. We have a fabulous school presentation about the start. You are more than welcome to. However, it will be great, and they told me 10 minutes. So I would, please feel free. You are welcome to leave that as well.
Well, actually, I was going to say...
Hold 1 sec.
Yeah, LWSP, go ahead. I know you got an early morning.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming. For our Prop 1 concerns, because we've got a group, I was going to suggest that maybe Jane has 5 minutes to talk about how we fit SROs into our schools. We don't get a whole lot of reports of children being arrested.
I'd like to say we could come back and address that.
I just want to make
than
sure
doing it
that
right
people
now.
who are concerned hear
Okay.
from.
And go ahead. Oh, sorry, I'm new. I think there are some things that we will be engaging in with the City of Kirkland that will give better definition to the role of the SRO and some clarity with that in terms of historically how they have lived and worked in our schools and what the vision is for that role moving forward. And I think that will lend some clarity, as well as the vision for just overall security and safety as we do some community engagement strategies moving forward. And I think that also lends itself well to hearing from our community.
And I just want, as the longest-serving board member, I wanted to let you know that our SROs currently do a lot more social work than police work. Hopefully that will be something we're able to maintain through this partnership. But
Can we just hire more social workers?
I wish we could,
Okay,
but yeah.
excellent. And there will be much more forthcoming on that.
I am going to add that I had the opportunity to spend an hour with an SRO on Saturday, and I had some of the same questions that some of you brought up. And personally, that was very helpful for me, and feel free to email me, and I will share with you what I learned personally.
Okay, thank you. So yes, more to come. So I would like to move, oh yes, and thank you so much for your time. So I would like to invite forward our Directors of School Support for the Host School Report. Or the opening school report, I guess I should say.
Yes.
There we go. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Stavum and members of the board. We appreciate the opportunity to give you a brief presentation on the opening of school. We're going to cover kind of preparing for the opening of school this year, the beginning of school, some changes that we have in store this year, and then looking ahead moving forward. Between May and September, May of last spring and September, we've recruited, hired, and onboarded 307 certificated staff. We've also recruited and hired 188 classified staff and about 20 administrators since May of last year. This is really, when I say we, I do want to kind of clarify the pronoun, and we is really, oh, you don't see it? Oh, okay. Okay. So I just want to clarify the we is really a lot of people in the district, and hiring is a good example. It's folks on the CLT, it's the administrative support secretaries that were here tonight, teachers, principals have done a lot of work. A lot of effort have gone into hiring, and I'm pleased to say that we've got some great new hires that we've got. We've also, part of the preparing for the opening of school is on August 2nd and 3rd, we welcomed and hosted 20 new administrators to the district, spent a couple of days with them, and part of that, if you look at this, if you can see the slide, part of that you can see posters up there, and one thing that we did this year is we had members of CLT from every division and every department come in and really have small group sessions with each of our new administrators and really talk to them about the structures and support that are available to administrators and kind of what their role is in the district. It was really cool. And one thing that was obvious in our work this year is we really did a good job, I believe, in collaborating with each other and kind of bringing things together as a CLT, a central leadership team, kind of collaboratively, and this is how we support you. So again, it's the big we. We also did some work on instruction and instructional leadership, some equity work with our new administrators. On August 7th, we started our August administrator kind of LEAP training, and we had about 140 administrators, which included the 20 new administrators and 8 administrative interns. And we did a great team building activity at the beginning of that. We had an opportunity to talk about and learn about really our commitment to every single student graduating and what that means, and kind of the idea of equity is really an important concept that we need to be aware of. We need to make sure that that we're doing our best to remove barriers and to provide support for students that need it so that every student can graduate. We talked about our why as a district. Why do we do this? Why is this important? We talked about our personal why. Why is it important that we're committed to this? We looked at data and really how can we use our continuous improvement plans to really support providing opportunity and getting rid of the achievement and opportunity gaps that we have for some of our students. We talked about passion, practice, persistence. I believe we had a full, I think, 5 or 6 days that we were together over a 3-week period and really did some great work together. The other part of preparing for school was from August 16th to the 23rd, we had 280 new certificated staff that participated in the Educator Introduction Academy. And really, the purpose of this is really similar to what we did with our new administrators. It really is an opportunity to welcome these educators to the district, to provide them with an overview and kind of initial training on what we're about as a district, around curriculum, assessment, instruction, technology, a lot of different stuff. Again, really meaningful work and really, I think, a great job of our district coming together, different departments and different divisions to really provide support to our new teachers and new employees to the district. Between August 27th and the 31st, we had district leap time, which teachers and staff spent time in their buildings, as well as getting some district training on, we had an equity launch, which was very successful. We had different trainings, and then also during that week, staff spent time in their building working on team building, continuous improvement. We covered a lot of stuff, and I could go on for hours on the topics that we covered, but I think, again, it was a successful preparation for the start of school. People were excited about it. There's always too much work to do, but I think people were excited about the work and the why. So anyway, and I didn't introduce myself either, did I? I'm Rick Burden, you know me, but Rick Burden, Director of School Support for the Lake Washington Learning Community.
Thank you, Rick. Good evening. My name is Dale Cody, Director of School Support for the Juanita Learning Community. As Rick spoke to the tremendous amount of work, energy, and time it takes to get school up and ready, and so then it begins. And as you probably know, it's a different sense when kids hit the school door. Things in a weird way tend to calm down. There's a sense of even better purpose and excitement around having these kiddos in our school. This year, we welcome 227 preschool students who will graduate with the class of 2032. I had to do the math a few times on my hands. I think I have it correctly. They are in sites across our district: Bell Elementary, Carson, Dickinson, Juanita L., Muir, Rush, and Sandburg. This year, we welcomed 2,309 kindergarten students who will graduate with a class of 2031. One of the things you may know is that we spent some time in the first 3 days of school helping kindergartners transition into school. We do know best practice and research shows that transitioning in many areas in life, but into school, in between levels, and even out of school are really important. So families in the first 3 days got to meet their teacher, got to talk as a family with their teacher about areas of strength, growth. The student probably got to see the desk they got to sit in before school started, which really helps in that transition on the first day of school, which for our kindergartners was on the 4th day of school this year. It's also helpful in transitioning parents as well. I love the picture up there, if you can see it on the lower left. Yeah, where they look through. Administrators, since we've started doing this, have talked about the fact that it is much easier to be able to help parents move along and say goodbye because they have the opportunity to interact with the staff and the classroom that they leave their children in. Little kindergartner down there, Crystal, wants to be a mermaid when she grows up in case she can't quite read her sign. So we welcomed 14,778 elementary students this year into 32 elementary schools. We welcomed 7,036 middle school students across 11 middle schools and 7,956 high school students across 8 high schools. Class of 2019 has 1,848 students. Each learning community Rick spoke to this year as well in our events that we had, each learning community really takes pride and responsibility in helping every child, no matter when they start at preschool, kindergarten, all the way through, helping to get students across the stage on time. At graduation within each level is really important, and they take a great deal of responsibility and pride in that. So students have hit the doors, and we are starting to run into a bit of a rhythm in schools now, which is great to have. And as I said earlier, having them in the hallways and in classrooms makes it all worthwhile.
Hi, I'm Sue Ann Sullivan, Director of School Support for the Redmond Learning Community, and I have the pleasure of talking to you about some of the exciting changes that we have going on this year. First of all, we implemented new boundaries in the Eastlake and Redmond Learning Community, and as you know, we started that process about 1.5 years ago. There was a lot of community input, and staff and administrators worked very hard to talk about what was the right way to distribute our growing population. So after we finalized that process in the middle of last year, that worked out quite well. We were happy to open 2 new schools, Ella Baker Elementary School and Clara Barton Elementary School, and to redistribute some of the enrollment to those 2 new schools. We also addressed capacity this year with the installation of a number of new portables, SAGE portables, which are smart academic green environment portables, which are really lovely, as you can tell in the photo. 8 were placed in the Lake Washington Learning Community, 2 in the Juanita Learning Community. And we also are continuing construction at 5 sites this year: Kirk Elementary School, Meade Elementary School, Juanita High School, Redmond Ridge Middle School, and the old Redmond Schoolhouse, which will be an early learning center. Additionally, this year, we have expanded our extended day program. It's now at 12 schools, including one of the new schools, and we are increasing in a rolling capacity, in a rolling way, throughout this year to increase capacity to serve more students at each of these 12 sites. And we also, as you know, implemented the entry control system at all of our elementary schools and middle schools, and high schools are coming on board very soon. And this allows us to lock all of our external doors and to know who is in our building at all times. Visitors push a button, are admitted by office staff, and show photo ID as they then enter the office.
Is that only during the school day, or is that, I'm just wondering, during like drop off in the morning, is this also part of the game? It's new to me.
Typically, the schools open for a brief window of time right at entry.
Yep.
And then lock.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once the
And
bell
then there's
goes,
a
then they
staff
go into the system.
monitoring the entry at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening. I'm Matt Livingston. I'm the Director of School Support for the Eastlake Learning Community. I'm going to talk about professional learning for throughout the year. As you know, we have a district equity team that formed last year. This year, each school will be forming a school-based equity team. That's the red schoolhouse there. Many of our schools have had a team for a while. Some are starting them this year. And 2 of the focus areas that they'll have is talking about courageous conversations using the Singleton book as a resource, and then deciding and determining how are they going to include student voice in their school. Some of the professional learning will continue from the August work that Rick talked about. So that's the culture responsive teaching, SIOP, next generation science standards, and dyslexia. So administrators and teachers were trained in August, and that will continue throughout the year through our professional learning department. When we're talking about the opportunity and achievement gap, we have 4 systems in place. They've been in place for a while. The SIP, our Continuous Improvement Plan, the PCC work that teachers do, the PGE, the Professional Growth and Evaluation System that evaluates teachers, and the PPGE, which is the Principal Professional Growth and Evaluations, how we evaluate our school administrators. The reason I'm highlighting these 4 is within those 4 processes are specific opportunities to address the achievement gap. And so if we look at the SIP, that's where schools are analyzing their data, right? That's where they're identifying achievement gaps between different subgroups, and they reflect on the goals that they set for last year, and they set new goals for the following year. And one of the goals specifically is called the achievement gap goal. So the school is taking a particular interest in one of those subgroups and designing a goal specifically about that. The PCC teams, they're meeting several times a month to talk about the students in their classes. This is where teachers are discussing strategies, looking at local data, so their classrooms, ongoing assessments that they're using, looking at that data and talking about strategies to ensure that all students meet the standards. In PG, all teachers write 3 goals, one for their class, one for their grade level, and one for a certain subgroup in one of their classes. And that subgroup is called the 3.1 goal. But what it is they identify certain students that they want to ensure meet standard. So that's, again, another example of how teachers are identifying a certain group of students that they want to ensure meet standard, which closes the gap. And then for principals and associate principals, for their evaluation, they're evaluated on 8 criterion, and criterion 8 is closing the achievement gap. So I'm highlighting that because that is, of course, one of the things that they need to be focused on also. So when we talk about our work for the year, these 4 systems that are in place generate a lot of discussion, especially for our work in supporting principals and the work that goes into supporting teachers who are supporting students, because if we meet the goals that we set through these different processes, then the achievement gap will close. So I think that's it for our formal presentation. We want to thank you again for the opportunity to spend time with you, to share with you some of the highlights of what's happened recently and what we're all looking forward to for the rest of the school year. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Any questions or no? We're ready. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come. That was fabulous to hear what is happening in our schools and the futures that's going forward. Lots of good work. So the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which I will now entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director LaLiberty. Jane, will you pull the board?
Sandra?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes, ma'am.
And Siri?
Yes. And Jane, will you please summarize the donations?
I will. Starting off the year this year, we have just a few on the list, but very important. First of all, from Albert Einstein PTSA to Einstein Elementary, a gift of $7,029.64 to support classroom enrichment and outdoor education. Ben Franklin PTA to Franklin Elementary is the amount of $9,339 to purchase eMass, which is elementary mobile access for students' devices. Carl Sandberg, PTSA to Sandberg Elementary in the amount of $1,000 to support outdoor education. And finally, Finn Hill Middle School PTSA to Finn Hill Middle in the amount of $6,134.54 to purchase classroom supplies, for total donations to the schools of our district in the amount of $23,503.18.
And I'd like to say thanks. I'd also like to just add, we have a summary of donations from 2017 and 2018 for the last school year, only for donations that were over 1,000. But in summary, the Lake Washington Schools Foundation gave approximately $160,000 in support of our schools. The PTSAs, approximately 1.1 million in support of the work in the schools, and other sources included about 310,000. So the fantastic community support and be able to ensure we have a wide, broad range of opportunities for our students. So thank you to our community members in doing so. So our next step is program reports. So Dr. Statham, I'm gonna let you take that.
Yes, we have a program report tonight on our preschool programs, and I'm asking Mike Van Orden to come forward and give us that report.
I'll take you right to the data. Might like that. Well, thank you. As you recall, our program reports are an opportunity to give brief updates on programs throughout our district. And you may also recall we have shared these program reports for a couple of years now. So what we've been doing this year and even last year was to highlight adjustments, changes in enrollment, changes in data, and highlight any program changes as well. So I'll do those tonight as we talk about preschool. Also remember, we make an effort to connect these with our end results. In particular here, our mission and vision to make sure kids are future ready, starting as early as 3 years old in some cases, have knowledge and skills that they need to move through school and beyond, and that they're connecting to those interdisciplinary skills and attributes. And we also connect to our executive limitations, as you know, we've been working on, particularly around student learning environment in our academic programs. And again, our goals for preschool, as all of our programs, are to make sure kids are ready to engage in academics so that they can be successful throughout their educational careers. So our preschool program in particular has a number of different components to it. All of them have a goal, as I mentioned, to get kids academically ready. We have one of our programs, Head Start, you may be familiar with. It's a federally funded program. 90% of the spots in Head Start are allocated for students who live below the poverty line. And as I think we've talked about in past years, that's a challenge in a district with a high cost of living. We also hold 10% of the spots in Head Start for students who have other significant needs, and that includes students with disabilities. So you can see we have about 60 to 70 students that are in the program. The enrollment has declined a little bit this year, enough that we have one less classroom, and that is year-to-year variation in number of families who apply or identification. But about the same number of students who are receiving special education services. Those programs are housed at Bell and Dickinson. They have a staff ratio of 19:2. They have very specific standards, I think we mentioned this last time in our last report on preschool, that are identified by the state, and they are monitored by Puget Sound Educational Service District, which has a Head Start group that comes in and works with us to monitor standards. Still very much in line with our goals of getting kids academically ready, but also, as I mentioned, have external standards that we use to kind of monitor the programs and to determine how services are delivered and how we staff those programs. Similarly, we have Ready Start Preschool, which serves students who are receiving special education services, as well as students who receive general education services, about 2 to 1 or so, typical students to students with disabilities. And those programs are housed throughout the district in our elementary schools, as well as, we'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes about our new center-based program to Old Redmond Schoolhouse. Preschool programs in each of those schools are really designed around school readiness, social emotional skills, communication, pre-academics, similar to Head Start, getting students school ready. However, they don't have the same external standards that our Head Start program has. We fund those with a combination of local, federal title money, as well as state money as well. And the students who are not receiving special education services come in on a fee-based approach. So I believe the fees are $300 a month for fee-based students. The other thing we wanted to mention, we are running a pilot process this year at Dickinson and Carson. We're looking at a model that we're going to start in our old Redmond schoolhouse around a completely inclusive model of preschool education, where all of the students are blended together. So roughly 50% students with disabilities, 50% students without disabilities. We've been working with the University of Washington to really talk about what's best practice in inclusive education so that all kids have access to core general education, meeting their individual needs, and we've been working with thinking about how do you staff that. We've been working about how do you think about kind of a universal design for learning and making sure that we're differentiating instruction for kids. So there's a lot of work that goes into that to get a really successful inclusive model. That's going to dovetail nicely with our efforts that we started last year as well of thinking about inclusive models in our elementary schools in K through 5 and then moving into secondary. So as I mentioned, again, working closely with the University of Washington, and I think we'll get a lot of traction from that. Our goal is to have that model, as I mentioned, starting in the old Redmond schoolhouse next year, but then also scaling it out to our other elementary schools. And so along those lines, we do have currently learning centers in 2 of our schools. So those are for students with more significant disabilities. Ultimately, we're thinking about how might students with more significant disabilities be included in settings like I just described. But currently, we do have programs that are staffed at about a 6-to-1, 6-to-2 with para-educators for students, as I mentioned, who have very specific needs. And then the goals and the programs are really developed around those individual students. And so those are run for our half days, 4 days a week at those 2 schools. Those 2 schools also have Ready Start preschools as well. So there is some blending, but really right now they're more of a self-contained type of program. And then the other program that we think that has a lot of promise, and we're again trying to figure out how it will connect as we move to inclusive, is our program called SNAPS, which is Students Needing Additional Support. It's a program that we worked on together with the University of Washington years ago, specifically for students with autism. And so what this does is it runs in parallel with Ready Start. So students will be in Ready Start for a portion of the day, and then SNAPS for another portion of the day, really to work on very specific skills to help students with autism have success in school settings, social settings, and larger community settings. So that is staffed at a 2-to-1 ratio. Again, it runs about half a day in most settings. We do have a social skills group that runs on Wednesdays as well, but the program was designed to be about 20 hours per week of instruction to really get the outcomes to help students with autism to start to have more success in more inclusive settings. The other thing, as I mentioned, is that our preschools do have many students with disabilities and individualized education plans and programs. And so we have services that are designed both to be delivered directly in programs during the day. So in many cases, there's a special education teacher and a general education teacher working side by side. And then we also have specialists who go into classes and work with kids. We also have some pull out. And then in some cases, we have specialists who go around the district and actually come to a number of different schools and work with kiddos. So those could be for things like speech-language pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy, again, developed around a student's individualized education program and then scheduled to provide services so we can make sure that all of those folks who are providing those services can meet with students in a timely way and meet the requirements of their IEPs.
Sorry, before you leave that slide, I have a very quick question. I assume that this is clip art, right? That top cube I'm confused by. It's a nice subliminal message that was obviously put there by people playing records backwards, but pot speech is...
Oh, yeah, OTPTS.
Interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
TPT.
Yeah. So, yeah, we can come back to that. So we wanted to also talk about what is it that students are learning very specifically in preschool courses, in preschool classes and preschool programs. And so as we think about that, we talked about those academic readiness skills. Those are built in together along with the social emotional skills that kids need to start interacting with peers, to start having some structure to their day, also thinking about their physical development, so those fine and gross motor skills that are so important for them as they learn to communicate and write and work together with play and communication. So those are built in, and as I mentioned as well, the academic skills. So early literacy, numeracy skills. There's also social studies and science. I'm really getting kids to start making observations about their world and start to ask questions, which really are foundational skills that they'll use across content areas, as well as the arts. So these are kind of the core things that we want students to learn and to be able to do as they move through preschool. And we get to that through our curriculum. And so this year we're implementing a new curriculum across all of our preschools. In the past, it's varied by program. So Head Start had a curriculum, Ready Start had a curriculum, our SNAPS program had a curriculum. Really the idea is that we want to make sure that all of our preschool kids, regardless of program, have a good Common Core experience. And by Common Core, I mean that in a generic term as opposed to the National Common Core. So this curriculum we adopted last year, and we are now working with implementation. So all of our preschools are being trained with the University of Washington facilitators to effectively deliver, because we know curriculum by itself without good instruction doesn't change outcomes for kids. So we have core training that happened in September and that will continue throughout the year. University of Washington is also working with our specialists to provide training, and by specialists that means people that are teachers on special assignment who are being trained to provide support for teachers as well, so that they can go in and observe and provide feedback and help to teachers as they use this curriculum to get to those outcomes that I was mentioning earlier. So this was a recommendation that came both out of our program review as well as a more recent University of Washington consultation about having a good core curriculum across the board really makes a difference. The other thing that was really beneficial to this curriculum is it lends itself much more to inclusive education than our prior curriculum does. It has differentiation strategies in it. It has a universal design for learning kind of underpinning, and it allows teachers to say, regardless of where a kid's developmental level is, how can we make sure that they still get access to the same thing all kids are getting, but maybe in a different way? And so that's built into the curriculum as well as the training that we're getting from the University of Washington, and we think that'll really start to help us get the outcomes that we want in preschool.
So is that across Ready Start and SNAPS?
Correct.
So,
So it won't be built into SNAPS, but remember, students who are doing SNAPS are also doing Ready Start, so they'll
Yeah.
get access in Ready Start.
Okay.
And SNAPS will be very specific to
Okay.
autism.
Cool.
So then the question that begs the question, so we've identified what we want kids to learn, how we're going to get there, and then what are the outcomes that we're looking at. We do have, again, by program, different measures that we use. So Head Start has some very specific requirements. We're still currently looking at an assessment that goes with Head Start programs, but there are also assessments built into the curriculum. And then we have a state assessment that we use for all of our preschool students with disabilities called the Child Outcome Summary. And that is essentially looking kind of more holistically with a team at each individual student and seeing how they're doing in relation to age level expectations for kiddos. So at a 3-year-old, you'd expect students to show certain social emotional skills and certain academic skills. And so the idea is to look at a whole series of data and then see how students are doing in relation to how you'd expect them to do at that age. So we look at that in 3 areas. One is positive social emotional skills, and then we report on 2 measures. One is the amount of growth that students make, and then the other is how our students in our program are doing in relation to how we'd expect them to do versus their age level peers, kind of a generic kind of norm age level peer. And so knowing that we have students with disabilities, we are comparing them to just typical developmental levels, and we look at how they do at the beginning of the year in relation to developmental levels and how they do at the end of the year, and we look at growth and see if there's growth in relation to those typical levels. And then we just look at where are they at the end of the year. And so we get results about a year behind because of the way it's reported. In positive social emotional skills, we did see substantial increase in growth for our students, and we are seeing that they are performing below age level peers. And again, that might be partly a function of the students in the system. This is comparing a smaller sample, and remember we saw about 100 kids compared to a very large state sample. But we do want to make sure we're attending to that. We want to make sure that we're always working to get our students to be performing where we'd expect them to be for their age, knowing that that still is, there's a continuum there as well, and we have to keep that in mind. The other thing we look at is acquisition and use of knowledge and skills. Similar, we have seen some growth in terms of how our students last year, or 16, 17, did in relation to age expectations and still performing slightly higher than the state in terms of growth. And then use of appropriate behavior, similar to state and a little bit below age level expectations for that area. The last two things we wanted to talk about, I don't think we mentioned last time, but just more intentional efforts to connect with parents. We have some of the typical things, yearly parent conferences that happen twice a year. We also make sure we're working with parents. This is, for many of our parents, the first time they're actually kind of getting introduced to the IEP process. And so we see this as a real opportunity to start kind of getting to some of those concerns we've talked about in the past about how families feel connected and engaged and a part of the IEP process. Well, this is a wonderful place to do that and build a positive relationship. So Shannon Hitch will be sharing some information with you next week. We'll talk a little bit more specifically about parent engagement efforts, but this is a great opportunity for us. Also with our SNAPS program, we do very intentional parent education nights as well. Our Head Start program has, as part of the program, a very strong parent and family engagement component. And then we look at opportunities for families to engage in their classrooms. And then again, also an opportunity to start making those connections with their PTSAs because they're part of a school and the school PTSA is there to welcome them and help them to learn more about schools and learn more about their community. So that's, again, preschool families in many cases, this is their first time, not all of them. And so it's an opportunity for us to make that really strong, positive first impression that's going to build and support family engagement over time. The last thing I wanted to do is give you a very quick update on our new preschool center program. As you know, we've been working on converting Old Redmond Schoolhouse to incorporate preschool learning spaces. That'll be 10 classrooms. 8 of those will be Ready Start and 2 will be SNAPs. Those are designed to give us some capacity and new facilities. Most of the classes will probably be serving students who are currently, or programs that are currently at Dickinson. And as I mentioned, this program, this center is going to be really designed to be an inclusive model for the district. So the idea is by 2019-20, this will be a fully inclusive preschool program with a very specific model that we can then use as a demonstration and as an example to scale to other schools. And so we're being very intentional about the program that's being designed there, as well as the facilities, to be thinking about what does it take to have a fully inclusive preschool setting. And so that's a combination of working with University of Washington, working with our facilities team to really be very thoughtful about how that program runs. The goal is to have it open by 2019-20. So that's our preschool presentation.
Thank you. I think there are a few questions that people might have. So, Eric? The questions, so just checking.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how are we connecting our ends results, in particular, first of all, let me start with a compliment. Fantastic job. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. That goes without saying. But, and I appreciate the data that we have here, but I guess as a board, we need to think about how we're going to develop indicators for, and how we're going to connect our end results with what we are doing and the data that we are seeing for pre-K. I don't think we have, Siri or somebody who's been on the board longer and has more institutional knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we are doing that currently.
Currently, we don't have anything specific in our ends results, but we do walk kids.
Yeah.
That's right.
Go ahead, Mike.
And we talked about seeing if we can disaggregate our preschool students and their walk kids score, because what you know is you get walk kids is you get how they're doing when they enter the program. And so we go, well, if they're not in our preschool program, then why are we holding ourselves accountable to that? And if they are in our preschool program, we should be using that as a measure of how our preschool programs are doing. Does that make sense?
So that we have talked about wanting to do and be able to build that piece.
Yeah, I guess, so then we should do it, would be my comment.
But so it sounds like one of the things is to look at the ends results of how preschool might be a piece that we look at of what we're doing in regards to those outcomes. Am I following you?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, this static is just like.
No, that's okay. We can put that down as a policy sort of thing, in which in reviewing those policies, so that's fine.
Couple of things. One, as we look at the preparation and the vetting, if you will, of the levels of the preschoolers coming in with special needs, usually loud enough, and their special needs students at that point, are we also doing vetting to see which of those need adaptive technology that early? Because the earlier you get it, the less you're going to spend at the high school level.
We can check. I know there's quite a bit of research on best times to introduce technology, and I think, like you're saying, you've talked about in the past the importance of communication, and then balancing that with not introducing technology so early that it has a negative effect. But I can check that with our assistive tech.
It's. I realize preschool may not be the point, but I think you start to identify who might be.
Yeah.
And to make sure that as they progress to the preschool, going into the kindergarten or first grade, that you track them carefully and start introducing modes of communication, because the more they can communicate at that level, the less of a behavioral situation it's going to be at a high school or middle school level. Two, you were talking about the original program that brought UW and LWSD together for SNAPs. And I see that there's been a lot of interplay since then too.
Right.
But given the initial working between UW and LWSD on SNAPs, have we had recently, in the last couple of years, a reassessment of, here's what we originally started with, and we thought it was a really good idea. Have we done any benchmarking to show how successful or unsuccessful, unfortunately, hopefully I wouldn't do the latter, this is, and what have we learned? And what could be done perhaps better? What didn't play out and why? Third goes actually, it's up. Slides 12, 13, and 14. As we talk about the idea of having more inclusion and the idea of the dual teaching, and we have on these slides 12, 13, and 14 talking about the growth rate in students and their, I lose my train of thought, of their social norms. And one of the things I think it ought to be tracked is how can we help make inclusion be a way of introducing social norms. I say that because I know a lot of the kids, as they're included with typical peers, they will rise to the occasion. Some might not, some do. I know my son, when he was included in classrooms, he kind of gravitates to the level in the classroom, to be quite frank, up or down. And I think that might be a way to improve our school norms on social interaction, and might even be a good not test case, but a model, if you will, for the rest of the state. To look at that.
So a couple of quick questions on the graphs on 12, 13, 14. Functioning with age expectations.
Yes.
I'm guessing, please educate me if I'm completely off base here, but that relates to kids on an individual level, and whatever their challenges are is going to, it's going to change year to year depending on how challenged your student is. And so the fact that the state seems to gone to.
Oh, that's better.
Okay, now we've got it. I'm guessing that's an indication of the depth of challenges that our students have, and not any outcome of a particular program. There are some students that have more
it's
challenges.
really interesting. It asks a team to use a 7-point scale to assess, and they look at a variety of data. So they could look at observational data, they can look at curriculum embedded measures, they can look at IEP data, and to say, based on what we're seeing, how is this student doing compared to what we'd expect a student at this age to do? So that's an interesting comparison, right? Because kids come in along a continuum. And so we have students with disabilities that we're saying, okay, that's normal, for lack of a better term. And so how do you compare to that? And then you score on a scale of 1 to 7. So 7, you're above, 4 and 5, you're right in the range, and 1 below. So, it's kind of this interesting subjective scale that a team comes to that allows us to kind of see how kids are doing over time in relation to their peers in maybe a gen ed setting. It's a state request. It's actually federal requirement we follow. Our state has adopted this measure. I think there's probably other things we want to look at as well, but it's one that we have that's consistent that we can use to get comparisons across the state. I don't know if that completely answers your question, but it's one I've kind of puzzled over as I've been reading more about it too.
Yeah, that's very helpful because I assumed that from a program base, our outcomes are usually always way beyond what the state expects. So I wanted to just clarify that actually it has more to do with the level of challenge that the student comes into the preschool with.
I believe
and
so,
really doesn't have much to do with, is that program working? I mean, they might have this far to go to get to a 5-year-old's expectations
and I think
instead of this far.
That's how you get this measure up here, the rate of growth is really one that I think to me is a better indicator of our program and what it's doing. And so if the rate of growth in our program is better than the rate of growth across the state, that means that, like you're saying, we're closing the gap. Now, we still want to make sure our kids are going to be successful when they come into kindergarten and first grade. And so we need to keep an eye on this scale. But this is, I think, more a measure of the program and the effectiveness of the program.
Great. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. And then as far as the Old Redmond Schoolhouse goes, and I know I asked this question last year, and forgive me, I cannot remember what the answer was. So I'm going to ask it again. We have 2 levels, 3 levels. Are our preschool students, I'm thinking of special needs students, young students, fire drills, evacuation needs. Are we mostly on the ground level, or are we utilizing
Right
other
now,
levels?
it's second floor, and I believe that's a function, Barb might be able to answer this, and actually Forrest is here too. It's more a function of the facilities themselves and our ability to make the spaces work for a preschool setting, and that the second floor is the best place to do that. So that's going to necessitate things like making sure the stairways are secure, making sure kids have access. Am I hitting that correctly? Forrest says that is correct.
So do we have students in wheelchairs, and are there ramps on the second level?
Yeah, so accessibility is part of it, and that's going to change from year to year. So students that are entering next year, I can check. I don't know if we do, but the expectation would be we would have to have accessibility for students in wheelchairs because the program's going to be there over time.
I'm just thinking of my own
And
kids.
elevator, correct.
Okay, I'm just thinking of fire drills and evacuation
Right.
needs and how difficult it is to get young children of any situation out of a building.
And I think it's come up before in the past too of the importance of making sure staff are trained to do that effectively. So it's not just making sure you have an elevator, but making sure a staff member knows that you have to have a plan in place in advance to make sure kids know how to evacuate.
I wanted to continue the questions around 12 to 14. The outcomes, the functioning with age expectations is definitely a function of what the baseline is for each kid. So I'm not at all concerned that that bounces around a lot year to year. The substantial increase in growth, I love trying to figure out where to put the comma in some of these things. This is a substantial increase in growth, comma, rate in LWSD. How many of our students were experiencing a substantial increase in growth, not their growth rate. That I am interested in as a measure. My problem is when you have a baseline that's at 90, it sort of is most people believe that they have managed to move the kids they were given significantly. Have they managed to move them further or less than average? So what we're looking for is some sort of a measure that is a relative growth of students in our program as compared to the state. I'm not sure that the substantial increase in growth fits that, but if it's the best thing you can get at state-wise, that's that.
Right.
Just in terms of an internal comparison year on year, when you're talking about a 7-point scale, it'd be very interesting to know how far do we move the average child each year? Are we moving them further on that 7-point scale?
Yep.
And that's not something where we necessarily would have access to the data at the state level to compare it, but certainly internally we'd be able to build that up and report it out. And I totally get that you're still trying to figure out what the metrics are going to be. In the long term, I see that as one that would be useful for us.
And I think this was something I need to check into a little bit more. I think we can drill down into each of those 7 points. So for example, a point 1 is that students who did not improve at all in relation to their peers. It would be interesting to know how many of those students were students who started very near their peers and just stayed there. So I think we might be able to drill down a little bit more. I mean, our end's still relatively small, but it might be worth just digging into to see if it gives us more discrete information that's more actionable.
But I agree with your first intuition that those top 2 lines are more meaningful than the bottom ones.
Right.
That's going to jiggle around a lot depending on how profoundly affected kids are year on year.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think now that our curriculum is well in place, that gives us some opportunities for the assessment part. Having used the gold in past districts, that's one effective measure. But the other thing that I think it probably is good for us to think about is also studying the long-term effects. And there are some studies out there that are tracking preschool through 3rd grade and some indicators like that that help us have a little bit more long-range view of the effects of preschool. Because when we look at where our best investments are, I think we know early childhood programming, quality early childhood programming is one of those areas that really impacts that long-term achievement gap. And so I think that's something that we'll want to look at more closely. But I know having that curriculum question answered is a really good first step in then beginning to look at what else is possible.
Mike, I appreciate the report, and I just want to have a couple comments for you. As we look at federal/state requirements, I'd really encourage us to think of those as the floor, because in my mind, that's the minimum we should be doing. And we talk about having a district that excels, and this should be a place where we excel, because the better we start off with those kids, the better they're going to be off in the to the high school level, to the academy. So just keep that, and I would really be almost not even call it a floor, but a basement. On the question of evacuation of limited mobility students, to me, the idea that there is an elevator in place doesn't cut it. And this goes beyond the preschool issue. I mean, Cassandra's question triggered a memory of mine of a student at Redmond High who had limited mobility, wheelchair bound, and the only class for her for algebra or whatever was second floor, and they refused to move a class to accommodate. And we've all seen evacuations for fire drills. Even on the greatest fire drill, is chaotic. And I saw it was an accident waiting to happen, to be quite frank. And I'd really like us to look at how we give more consideration to the placement of where the classes are. Especially when you're talking about more mainstreaming and you're talking about more inclusion. Don't preclude that brilliant student who may be wheelchair bound from not taking advanced placement algebra because it's on the 2nd or 3rd floor. And 2, as we move towards inclusion in our elementary and our preschool, this begs the question of why our special needs kids aren't allowed in homerooms, or rarely. There was one child last year in Redmond High School who was in a homeroom, mine. And that's only because we insisted on it. And when they're not in the homerooms, they don't get the notice about school pictures, the graduation picture, you name it. They're basically off the radar screen. So as the kids move up and the inclusion is included up higher and higher, please keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to just thank you for the work. I think the use of taking advantage of having the old Redmond Schoolhouse and really being able to think differently of what we can do in that environment, I appreciate that thought process that's going into it. I think that plays in well to that desire to really be a top-notch school district that's paying attention across those boards. So kudos to really thinking about
and,
that.
And really, too, there's been lots of teams, including Forrest and our specialists and preschool teachers and parents. It's been really a wonderful effort on their part.
So it's exciting to think of a demonstration project concept, being able to go forward and really being able to tackle some of these difficult issues that are very challenging across the place. So that's fabulous. As you look at some of these, I also think about with early learning, is just funding issues and different things of doing that. So I would always be looking towards early learning is going to be a big component. We have the department in the state legislature. Their goal is 90% ready for kindergarten, so that's based on what kids? I think by the year 2024, if I remember correctly. So there is a lot of work. So being able to bring that in and this work here starts to set a really solid foundation. I would love to see, just building on what Dr. Stevem had said, can we follow our preschool kids through as a subgroup, possibly through those literacy and pieces as we go into our ends results? So that's just, I think we have a subgroup of 504. Could we have one of our preschool kids to just sort of, so just a thought. But other than that, fabulous. Thank you for your great work. And appreciate it all.
So,
it appears Chris still wants to say something. Hang
no,
on.
I've just got one last question. I actually really wanted to echo that this is fantastic. I mean, I can't get enough of preschool when it comes right down to it. This is important stuff. And the one other thing that I was wondering about is our Head Start on slide 4. You were seeing a modest reduction in the, sorry, not Ready Start, but Head Start, where we got from 73 to 58 on the previous slide. Are we, I don't know how to express this. How do we serve the near Head Start children?
That really is Ready Start. We actually use the so you remember I said for Head Start, it's 90% of the spaces are held for students who are at or below the poverty level, and 10% for kind of those more other needs. So a family identifies a kid needs some additional assistance, or we identify that, or a student has a disability, and we are serving those students through Ready Start. So we're using some of the Head Start ideas of how do you go out and reach out and identify kids who might need preschool or would benefit from preschool, not that more kids would, and that's the way we do it. Now there are other programs that don't have the same restrictions as Head Start. One's called ECAP that we're researching through Puget Sound DSD. They run Head Start and ECAP, and so that's something that we're considering as well. I think there's also the question of if we have a really great inclusive preschool program and we have funding for it, could we kind of make it that more of our approach to preschool?
Okay, thanks.
All right, I think now I can officially say thank you.
Thanks, yes.
Appreciate it. Okay, and next on our agenda would be the superintendent report.
Right, and we'll start off with a report from facility planning and a little on community engagement that I'll talk about at the end. We have a lot of projects still in motion, so Barbara will give us an update on those projects.
Great, thank you. All right, let me gear it up here. All right, all right, why is this not, sorry, it wasn't moving. Okay, I'm here tonight to provide an update on our facility planning and our Building on Success projects. We last provided an update at the, okay, thank you, at the June board meeting. So our Building on Success is our program that serves our growing enrollment and serves the district's long-term plan to continue to build schools and provide quality learning environments and experiences. So we'll talk about our bond project update. We have 8 projects going through the district, and some of those were mentioned tonight by our directors of school support and of course Mike in the preschool program. So I'll start off with our Juanita High School Rebuild and Enlarge project. That is our project that has a phased opening with the first phase opening in September of 19 and the final phase opening of September of 2020. So this summer, we received our permits to begin work over the summer, and we had temporary parking lots were completed in June, and that significantly improved the parking situation on that site. And then we also, over the summer, installed 10 classroom portables and got our a certificate of occupancy in August. We completed demolition of phase 2, and that's really what a phase 1 demolition, phase 2 demolition, and that we're using the term phase 2 to continue the project that will open fall of 19, the portion of the building, and then the next phase will open fall of 2020. So by January, we hope to have the phase 2 exterior building envelope complete. So this is just an artist rendering of the project. These are some of the construction pictures, an aerial overhead picture, and the right is the exterior and electrical room, and the lower middle shows the exterior brick veneer being installed, and the lower left is the main gathering stair in the commons. And this just shows right now, the yellow area is the construction zone. So the picture is a little light, but the field house is to the left of the yellow construction zone, and then the main building is in the middle of the construction zone. So, but they have done an excellent job of signage, and when you pull into the property, and protecting the construction zone from the student walking paths, and so. And we did, in the first 2 weeks of school, we've added police presence to establish the safe drop-off and pickup parking practices.
So for that one, it's phased construction, right? Where one wing's
Correct.
going up. When can we expect that first wing to become student housed?
So the first phase will open in fall of 19. So that will include the administration, counseling offices, a portion of the classrooms, and then the theater, I believe, will open later in the fall. It won't open right in September, but it will open, I think, December timeframe. And we'll continue to provide updates on further project updates. So, and then, of course, our 2 brand-new elementary schools that opened this fall. So very excited about those schools. We have Clara Barton and then Ella Baker. And very pleased with, so those opened this fall. And our facilities department, our builders, our jurisdictions, the city of Redmond, and King County, and our staff, they all did a fantastic job of getting these buildings ready for the first day of school. So over the summer, the building was complete, furniture move-in began, staff move-in began in August in Clara Barton. We finished the playground structure, we received our temporary certificate of occupancy from the city of Redmond, and school started on time, September 4th. And then so what is upcoming in October, we expect to have the final certificate of occupancy, and then we will have our grand opening ceremony on October 11th. So these are just some of the pictures of our beautiful new building. The top left is the main entry of the school. Top right is the playground. The bottom right is the courtyard entry away, across from the gym and the commons. And then the bottom left was the gym and commons, and the bottom right is the north side of the building. And then this is some interior photos of classrooms, the libraries in the top left, the gymnasium, and the shared learning area. So Ella Baker in the Redmond Ridge community, again, opened in the fall. And furniture move-in began in July. Staff moved in August. The temporary certificate of occupancy was issued in August and opened to first day of school in September. Same schedule, similar schedule. We will get the final certificate of occupancy in October, and we will have a grand opening ceremony on October 5th. And look for more information from our communications department about those ceremonies. So these are some pictures, the entryway to Ella Baker, and this is the top left. one of the classroom pods on the top right, the playground on the bottom left, and more of the playground on the left and right. And these are some interior shots. The top left is the second floor main corridor and just showing the use of the natural light. The top right is classrooms and the library area, and the bottom left is our gym and our PE teacher dancing with the Baker Bear, and then the bottom that's their mascot, if you didn't know. And the bottom right is the staff, picture of the staff getting ready to greet families to the new school. So, and then our new middle school in Redmond Ridge, which is planned to open in fall of September of 2019. So this summer, we completed the classroom, some classroom wings, and inspections were completed. The gymnasium painting started. The north parking lot curbs and gutters were installed, and the classroom wing drywall installation was complete. And what's upcoming in September is the track and field and tennis courts will be in place. Drywall installation in the Commons, library, and stage area, and then the elevator will be installed. So some more pictures, an aerial view of the school, and the stairwell, view of the interior stair. And then the bottom center photo is a completed parking lot. And you may ask yourself, why is there all these cars when school is not beginning? But that is where we're using that for the construction parking. So that's all of our construction workers who are working on our building. So. And then just some interior shots. The top left is the classroom casework being installed. The top right is the commons area and the library, which will be on the second floor. The bottom left photo is a shared learning area. And then the sports field is the center photo. And the bottom right is another shot of the library above the admin area. So Peter Kirk Elementary School, this is our rebuild and enlarged school, so it's being built right next to the old school, and that will open in the fall of 2019. So building permits were issued in June, and then a lot of work was done over the summer. Clearing and grading work was complete. The work on the geothermal wells began in August, and the first floor concrete placement began in August. And then what's happening in October is the structural steel installation begins, and the building enclosure work begins in November. So this is another artist rendering of the school. And then Margaret Mead Elementary, also rebuild and enlarge project, and that will open in September of 2019. Building permits were issued in May, and over the summer in August, the clearing and grading was completed, utility and concrete footings, and the first floor concrete placement began. And then same schedule as Kirk, the structural steel installation in October, and the building enclosure work will begin in November. Another picture of what that school will look like. And then Old Redmond Schoolhouse, Mike talked about our Old Redmond Schoolhouse that will open in fall of 2019. And we are advertising the bid this month, and the bid will open in October, and we will get our building permit and begin construction. And that's really interior improvements as opposed to constructing major construction. So there's just some pictures of the building. And then Explorer it was our first project that was completed, and so we're showing it last because it is completed. That was open in the fall of last September. And right now we're in just warranty work on that, and that's completed this month. So just a program update. So reminder that we are monitoring our program costs and estimates on a regular basis. We are in the third most expensive construction market. We have done intentional cost control measures to offset these increasing costs from this market. And so the good news is right now our program is at approximately 97% bid out. So we have our project costs locked in, and risk from market volatility is low. So our program does include $19.9 million of program contingency, and these funds are being used to offset our jurisdictional requirements and these market conditions and unforeseen project impacts. And we are expected to earn $3 million more in interest earnings, and we have received $7 million more in impact fees than originally estimated. Just some challenges with the program is funding depends on receipt of state construction assistance for 3 of our schools, Kirk, Meade, and Juanita High School. That was planned at $21 million. We did receive approval from OSPI this summer that we are receiving those funds, but we receive the funds at the end of the projects. We have to spend the money first, and then we are reimbursed for those. So cash flow, but that could create cash flow challenges, but again, we are monitoring that on a regular basis. And we're using the project contingency to offset market conditions, so it does reduce funds for unforeseen events, such as the concrete worker strike that we had a few weeks ago. So those things are things that are out of our control, and fortunately that strike did not had minimal impact to us. But if those things come up, that could, those are unforeseen events. So communication, we provide the community with regular monthly bond e-news updates. We're continuing on our website to post photography and video stories and social media postings. We've done 18 Facebook Live broadcasts with over 53,000 views. We are having grand openings for Clara Barton and Ella Baker in October. Again, more information about that forthcoming. And then we provide an annual bond progress information mailer, and that will be sent to all district households in October. So our website is where you can find more information under Building on Success. So the other piece of this is we want to just talk about our facility planning and community engagement. We are having conversations about at our we're starting our process to engage our community on our short-term critical capacity projects and our long-term visioning for the future. At tonight's study session, we discussed potential funding strategies and short-term needs, and then we also are discussing the community engagement process to address these needs and other areas that need to be visioned for the future. So that completes my presentation. Any questions?
Yes, I do think Eric had a question.
Yes.
So Barbara, one of your slides mentioned we don't receive our school construction assistance funds until the end of the project.
Yes.
Is that, is that how it always works, or is that it is?
Yes, it's always a reimbursement basis. You have to spend a certain percentage of the projects, and then you receive the funds afterwards.
And timing-wise, by afterwards, is it at completion? Is it upon final?
So we will start, I think we will start to, so Meade and Kirk, and we will start to claim those probably at the beginning of the summer. So it is really at the end of the projects. Wow. And then Juanita High School, because we'll have, phase 2, the first phase, we will start claiming that that year also, but we do expect to we won't receive the funds in 1 year. We actually will receive the funds for Juanita over a 2-year period.
Director Sage.
So we can get you specifics on when that is.
Give her the mic.
Excuse me. 2 quick questions. That reimbursement amount is a very small percentage of the overall cost of building. Can you give us an idea of
Correct.
what percentage it
It's
really is?
about an 8%, it's 8%.
So
I believe- yes.
92% each school district is expected to raise local money for. I just wanted to point that out.
And what's also interesting is we receive state construction assistance reimbursement for our rebuild and enlarge projects, Meade, Kirk, and Juanita, but we receive no state assistance for brand-new schools related to growth because
So
of how the formula.
absolutely no state reimbursement on brand-new schools.
Correct.
Okay. Did you want your microphone back?
I was going to say, we pay sales tax, too.
We
which
actually,
is
we
more
do
than
pay
8%.
sales tax, yes. So that's
Thank
the other
you.
piece of, yes.
I'm glad you jumped in there, thank you. Just one quick question on the Juanita High School project. I believe the city of Kirkland at some point approved, or there was an agreement between the district and the city, a right-hand turn lane eastbound on 132nd? Do we know when that is going to be coming to fruition?
I do not know the timing, but we can find out from the city and get back to you on that.
Okay, and then I guess I have one more. Forest knows. No, okay. Oh, it's in the city's
Yeah,
board, okay.
yeah, it's the city's.
Understandable.
It is the city's project, so, but we can ask them and get more information for you.
If convenient, I just wanted to make sure it was still in the plan. That'll be very helpful. And then this is probably also a city issue, but the traffic that is occurring on the west and east side of the football field where people drop off in the neighborhoods we did have a police officer on campus, well, not on campus, but at the entrance and exits the first 2 weeks of school. And now it's back to people reverting to their traffic habits and patterns and 15-point turns trying to turn around by the football field. Is it a city issue to ask them for some kind of directional striping or some kind of flow, anything that would be done to actually help people understand how to drop their child off and maintain their own lane? Is that something the city would do because it's a city street?
Yeah, if it's, we wouldn't be able to do striping on a city street, so we can continue to work with the city to discuss kind of what these concerns and see what some strategies are to improve.
Sure, and also mention it the next time I see each and every one of them. And so what you're saying is I can't take my little spray can out there and make lines? No, not officially, okay.
Have the
all
art
right.
student do it with chalk.
I can't give you direction to do that, so.
Got it.
I'm glad to hear that the strike didn't have an impact on us cost-wise. Did it have an impact on the schedule?
Can you ask your question?
The concrete workers strike.
The concrete, okay, sorry, I didn't hear you.
And to be quite frank, all the other unions were observing their
Right.
strike.
Right.
When you said it didn't have an impact, was that the cost-wise, or was that also timing-wise?
It was a 3-week strike, so we
Yeah.
did move things that we were going to get done in late August, beginning of September. Those are being moved to October, but we're working with our builders and our construction partners, and they are back on schedule, and so we don't anticipate that having an effect on the schedule.
I seem to have seen some activity on Redmond Ridge Middle School, even on the weekends, so that's why I was assuming. As I looked at the one slide that showed the installation of the cabinets, I had a flashback. Are we, and I assume this is also this will affect Juanita High School as well as the Redmond Ridge Middle School cooking classes. And as they're putting in the cooking stations, are we going to have the cooking stations made accessible for limited mobility students? And because the other high schools don't. And to encourage inclusion, we need to have those facilities to not only to help those kids, but also to educate the other kids in that class, the typical developing kids, as it were, as they're referred to the needs of special needs people when they're cooking and cleaning and so forth.
So let me find out for you.
I assumed, but I didn't think you'd have an immediate answer, but I thought I'd ask.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Forrest is answering yes.
Forrest is nodding. Sorry, I didn't see him nodding.
Are the other
So-
schools being retrofitted? Are the other schools being retrofitted? Thank you.
Thanks, Forrest. All right, anything else?
Thank you. First off, I would also like to say excellent job in building the 2 new schools, getting those opened on time and on budget.
Yep.
That is great work, especially in this environment that we're currently working in. It is not easy to be able to do that. So that shows that extra work that went through with the Design Advisory Board to really
Yep.
look at those cost savings. So good job to everybody, Forrest and your team, and the work that took place. It was exciting to see the kids walking into that school. So it's fabulous. Nice job. Just wanted to
thank
make
you.
sure that that was out there.
Yeah.
Now, I think you might
Lots
have
of-
more that you wanted to add.
I just have a few comments to conclude the superintendent's report.
Okay, should we let
Brief
Barbara
comments.
sit down? Or can she
Absolutely.
stand? All right,
Yes.
thank you,
Thank you,
Barbara.
Barbara.
Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, just for some additional points, it's a busy time, and as we hear about the construction projects and all the things that have happened this year, it takes a lot of people, so I just want to publicly thank our entire district for such a smooth start to the school year, as well as our parents and our community partners. As I'm getting to know the district, it's been fun to visit some of the different city events and meet many of our elected officials, and that comes in very handy as we continue to look forward and have great partnerships with our communities. But it's just nice to put names and faces together. I also want to say how impressed I've been as I've been attending some of our high school activities with our students and how supportive they seem to be of each other. And that is always something that's kind of indicative of the rest of the culture of a high school, and so it's been really fun just to see how our kids are in those things, and just give a little shout out to our students and the people who support them. We are looking forward to engaging our community, as Barbara talked about. We have a lot of things ahead of us. We have some district documents and planning that needs to be revised moving forward as they've come to some points of completion. So we're going to be asking community members to be part of that very soon. Some of our visioning for the future and looking at how we continue to adapt to the change and growth in our communities and think about what schools of the future look like. I don't know if any of you caught 60 Minutes last night, but they had a segment on students at another institution, college-level institution, who are doing some pretty amazing things. And I think we have great examples of that right here in our district. But I think we want to make sure that our students continue to not just be equipped to be citizens of the future, but they are creating the future for others. And I think that's really exciting to think about engaging with our community around that. I also just want to take a note of personal privilege and acknowledge some of our colleagues on the East Coast this week who have been victims of Hurricane Florence. And when we think about school starting and what that looks and feels like in our district, I'm always mindful of they are not having that kind of a start to the school year. And so our hearts go out to them as we think about maybe some ways that we can individually support them in relief efforts that are going to follow, but a very different kind of a school year. So all in all, busy time, and I appreciate particularly the cabinet members answering my questions and answering them again and sometimes again, but they've been very, very helpful, and it's just truly been a joy to get to know our district, and so I'm very thankful to be here. That concludes my report.
Well, thank you very much. We are very glad to have you here and appreciate all that you are doing. So our next is a legislative update. So Director Liberty, I will let you take this.
Okay, so this coming weekend is the WASDA Legislative Assembly, where WASDA will vote on, and the different school districts will collectively develop a list of legislative priorities so that we can participate in that. The board has previously had a work session to discuss what priorities we will bring to the WASDA Legislative Assembly. These are not necessarily the board's legislative platform, but are priorities for the Assembly. So from the discussion that we had, I have provided, and I think everyone has in front of them, a draft of legislative priorities. I put this together based on my notes and our discussion from, okay, excellent. our discussion from the last work session. I would entertain comments on this, any changes, and then I would ask that we, once we've discussed this, that we approve a set of priorities that I can bring with me to the assembly. So, yes.
Well, thank you for putting this together. I know we spent a lot of time working on this, and you pulled it all together in an organized fashion. I had an email question for you, and you had answered this, so I just wanted to point it out for everybody else, that we get to actually vote on 15, is that right? You get to when you get to the assembly?
That's right. So there are 15, thank you. Yes, we are to prioritize our top 15. I have a list of 20 here, with 5 extra just in case. So thank you.
No further comments.
So Director of the Liberty, I would like to commend you on this, although I question your font choice.
Wait, no. I mean, I'm open to feedback. I think it's Times New Roman, right?
It's obviously Times New Roman.
Yeah.
Have you not gotten the memo? Anyway, no, I actually have no concerns with this whatsoever. I'm just pulling your leg. The priorities I am comfortable with. The top 15, I think we went through this in great detail, and I think they're coherent in terms of our intent and where we stand. So we could put all the financial ones at the top because we will always want to do things like updating school construction funding. But fact is, that's just one among many, and I love the fact that we have several of our educational as opposed to operational things among our top 5. I think it expresses our desire as a district to not only operate effectively, but to educate as proficiently as possible. So thank you. This is good.
Eric, I'd also like to commend the idea of being able to have the special ed, special needs students in the early education issues up front. As we look increasingly at equity, we put our money where our mouth is on this, and I appreciate it.
So with that, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the priorities as drafted in this non-sans serif font.
Second it, but I like the font.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Stewart to approve the legislative positions and priorities as put forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so passed. So
If I could just wrap that up. So I will be traveling to Spokane on Friday. Siri is attending as well. And I will report back at the next meeting the results of the assembly. Last thing, we as a board do still need to develop our platform for the upcoming session. So I will work on a draft of that as well. And at a forthcoming meeting, we'll have something else to discuss.
excellent, thank you. Anything else? Okay, so moving with that, we are now at the point, is there any follow-up for the board on anything? There were a few things, I think the school resource officers and that piece that came through tonight, some of those questions around that, what is the program, what is the differences, I think some of that would be very important. I guess I would like to have a little more information and being able to speak to that. I know we have some on the website and different things, so I guess I would request that.
I would just note that there is a safety report coming up under the superintendent's report under October 1st, so that would maybe be a logical time to bring some of that information forward, if that pleases the board.
That sounds great.
Sounds great.
Okay.
And I actually just wanted to, I guess it's not follow-up, but to debrief on that exact topic, that I misspoke. It's not, our SROs do not do social work instead of police work. What they do is in the continuum of police work. from criminal investigation to incident response to preventive policing, which is in large part social work, are very heavily towards the preventive end of the spectrum. Always have been, and hopefully always will be. So I appreciate the concerns in the community, but this is not something where I feel that we're talking about bringing in a SWAT team or people to arrest more children. That is definitely not how we'll measure success of the program.
Director Stewart?
On board follow-up, right before the meeting, within 2 hours before our meeting, the Facebook pages were lighting up, and I'm surprised we didn't have a crowd of the folks from that because they were suggesting they were going to be here on the transportation problems. There was a large group, as I've shared with you in the past weeks, a lot of Facebook activity on the problems were presented, and I totally appreciate the fact that it's a shortage of folks. But that said, there are some issues with typically developing students. There's a major issue of safety with the SPED students being picked up on the street as opposed to near their home or inside an apartment complex. And that's just an accident waiting to happen. So I assume that we'll be having a transportation update given the problems we're having anyway with recruiting. And also, as for follow-up, I know we work very hard at missing or not having events on high holidays for the majority of our religions that our folks in our district share. But this year we kind of blew it in a big way with kindergarten. They start on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. So we need to be very, I just got an email on that. So just if we can be, I know it's hard and I know it's difficult, but it's one of those things that as we reach out to the community, it's the little things that kill us.
So in regards to the question on transportation, it would seem like a board brief might be the most effective way to do so and being able to follow through. Will that work? Okay. Thank you. Any other future agenda items? No? Any other board member comments? Okay,
Can we give Cassandra another microphone, please? Can we find the money for that?
We can request that there is some technical assistance to be able to deal with the microphone issue at some point. Absolutely.
I believe there's been extensive work on that, so I'm thinking we'll need to, yeah. Can try
Luckily, I'm
various
sure
methods.
You
Now
two
it's
can
Eric's
share.
problem. We just swapped.
Okay, from that, again, I'd like to just thank staff and everybody in order to get the school off to a good start and all our kids there and to be able to have things rolling in a good place and being able to get forward. So nicely done on that part. It's a busy time of year, especially with all the transitions we've had at this point in time. From there, our upcoming board meetings are September 24th. We will have a study session starting at 5 o'clock in Hughes on special education and update. Then on September 29th, we will be having a special study session that will be doing some board superintendent relationships as well as equity. And then on October 1st, we have a study session at 5 p.m. Says my topic is still to be determined in Hughes, and then the board meeting will be held at 7, and there will be public comment at that one. What didn't I?
Did that to myself. Sir, you didn't give the time for the special study session on the 29th.
It's at 8:30. I'm sorry, I don't have it written down right now. I'm not sure. She's doing a quick search. It will also be posted again at the next board meeting. It'll be posted online. 8 a.m. till noon, so it is an early morning rise.
I think that was Freudian on your part because you didn't want to be up at 8 o'clock.
It probably was. So with that, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director La Liberty and seconded by Director Carlson that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned.